Internet culture is the weirdest thing, in that you're more likely to make a few $100 filming a cat riding a vacuum than you are producing anything worthwhile or thought-provoking. It's not necessarily bad, but that idea of charm carrying things way higher than they would have otherwise gone is pretty fascinating. Just look at Tommy Wiseau and The Room. In video games, though, it's a slightly different story, as many of us make a point of at least checking out the B or C tier titles that so many critics tell us to stay away from. Terminator Resistance, for example, is actually pretty damn solid. With a game, you'll always be controlling whatever the hell is on screen as well, rather than being subjected to it through hours of film. And if nothing else, it can give you a damn good laugh. With all that stuff in mind, there are millions of ways that only in video games, some titles, ideas, characters, developers, etc. can fail upwards and in a lovable way. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video games that failed so hard they actually won. Number 10. Heavy Rain. Quantic Dream's second major release is something that, depending on how much you can forgive stilted execution in favor of potential, means you'll either be laughing all the way through or falling in love with David Cage's multi-protagonist detective thriller instead. Yes, the Jason memes pretty much buried this overnight, but the David Fincher-esque tone, score, and cinematography that engulfs Heavy Rain at least showed that Mr. Cage had watched the likes of Seven, The Game, or other color-drained late 90s crime capers. Centered on a child abduction, you play from the quad viewpoints of the father, a private detective, a journalist, and an FBI agent. Another great idea that occasionally gets broken in half by some alarmingly bad voice acting, especially from the children. It's this stuff that ultimately breaks through, though, and holds Heavy Rain up. The project clearly has heart, and Cage clearly has a love for this period in Hollywood history. Heavy Rain and David Cage played a key role in more mature and involving narratives emerging in video games over time. The final twist might be divisive, and that voice acting really is atrocious but also hilarious at points, and damn it, Heavy Rain, I think I love you. Number 9. Deadly Premonition. Japanese genius Hidetaka Suhiro's second big project, Deadly Premonition, was finally the one that stuck with gamers the world over, even if it is, hand on heart, almost The Room of video games. Way better researched and delivered than Wiseau's disaster piece, here you play Agent Francis York Morgan, a chain-smoking, wisecracking detective with a heart of gold, who's just as likely to solve crimes as he is to monologue about Tom and Jerry. Already you can tell why some people fell in love with the whole thing, but it's also impossible to avoid how broken a lot of the dialogue scenes are, how primitive the driving mechanics are, and how horrifically outdated the shooting feels. I mean, you're aiming with the right trigger, locking with the left, and then shooting with the A button. Who even did this? For all of its flaws, though, Deadly Premonition sold like crazy and is currently in line for a sequel, even though it feels like some parodic student project run wild. There is just so much effort put into every single aspect of the world and narrative. Destructoid gave it a perfect 10 out of 10 for their review, and thanks to a flash sale on Amazon at the time, it briefly topped the charts in America, beating Modern Warfare 2 and Mass Effect 2 to claim the number 1 spot. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the power of just giving something a go. Number 8. Leisure Suit Larry. Leisure Suit Larry is practically Josh Brown the game, but there's something about harnessing all that mid-20s male desperation and making it playable that made the series completely endearing. Filled with dirty jokes, innuendo, and a parody of the entire in-person dating scene as it existed before the digital revolution, old Larry Lovage is at least recognizable by pretty much everyone. Now, I am talking about the earlier titles, when all of this was the driving force, not the middle chunk in the 2000s where various studios gave into smut entirely, churning out objectively terrible toss with as much cleavage and perverted visuals as possible. Larry's 2010s adventures revolve around a remaster that came into existence thanks to fan funding, and another 2018 sequel that got back to Metacritic scores above the 20s, sitting on 71. The series is a remnant of 90s video game attitudes, but somehow it's still going pretty strong. Number 7. 50 Cent, Blood on the Sand. There's something to be said about a rapper who's so aware of his own overblown image that he stars in a game where you can indulge in gory close-up kills as you drop literally hundreds of bodies in time with his own music. Not giving the tiniest mouse pumps about believability or anything other than because video games, the story starts with old Fiddy getting paid for a gig in the form of a giant crystal skull, only for it to get stolen. Where my skull becomes the driving force, and it's over to you and the rest of G-Unit to get it back. One power-up, Humvee driving section, or brutal stabbing at a time. Honestly, this was just brilliant. I kinda miss third-person action games with melee attacks, fun level layouts, and power sets. The Punisher, Prototype, Star Wars Force Unleashed, they were all just plain fun. Yes, Blood on the Sand might have sold terribly compared to previous game Bulletproof, but overall, it just totally slapped. Number 6, Red Card Soccer. It's all well and good embracing the beautiful game for what it's supposed to be. FIFA and Pro Evo's accurate animations, ball physics, and facial models are totally fine. But what if I want to tackle someone with a flying dropkick? Or take a shot with so much power, it sends the keeper flying back into the goal along with the ball? Chances are that even though that description is still rooted in football, it sounds way more appealing to those who don't even follow the sport. And for good reason, as despite a complete disregard for what it was portraying, Red Card was a fantastic foray into the likes of what EA Big's various titles like SSX or Freakstyle were going for overall. Although it was a total critical flop, it got a huge backing from thousands of gamers who had no love for football or soccer in the first place, reveling in the arcade overblown insanity that this offered in abundance. Number 5, Flappy Bird. Remember this thing? For as much time, resources, and talent has been put into the mobile space now, giving us Pokemon Go, Fire Emblem Heroes, Mario Kart Tour, etc., one of the biggest successes from something that just looked like nothing was Flappy Bird. Barely animated and focused on a bird that fumbles its way through what are clearly Super Mario's pipes without touching them, that was the entirety of Flappy Bird. And yet, seeing how far you could get kinda conquered the freaking world. Bringing in $50,000 a day and having an annual revenue of $892 million, the Flappy Bird craze went a little too overboard in the end, with creator Dong Win pulling the game from app stores due to the overwhelming amount of death threats and feedback he was receiving about its addictive nature. The game has returned in various forms on various stores, be they third-party or through Win himself, but nothing beats that initial rush where everybody was trying to beat each other's scores. Number 4, Job Simulator. Like Shenmue going down in history for letting you use a forklift, performing labor tasks feels like the opposite of what you'd actually want to do for fun. And yet, Job Simulator makes it all work by cranking the dials of motion sensitivity all the way up. Set in a world where autonomy and machines have fully taken over, you are but a hapless human trying once again to understand how to get through a day's work. Developed by Alchemy Labs, this has some very Valvean charm to its script and tone, but gameplay itself revolves around doing the most basic stuff possible. Pushing buttons, drinking coffee, operating a computer, or placing things down in different places. It's all brought to life by the fact that moving and imitating everyday life in VR, knowing that you can break the scripting or do whatever you like at any time, is a blast like nothing else. Number 3, Death Stranding. Death Stranding just shouldn't work, like, at all. You've got a game where walking takes up 80% of your time, over-encumbrance is encouraged and part of the core challenge, and fetch quests are the only mission type. Sure, sometimes you'll go into an enemy encampment or sneak through a field of ghosts holding a button to hold your breath, but this is totally Fetch Quest Walking Simulator the game. And you know what? I love it. You love it, and everyone freaking loves it. Hideo Kojima took a ton of mechanics, assumptions, and ideas about open-world game design and flipped them all on their heads. By stripping away AI routines, open-world minigames, or anything other than delivering packages and building items that help other players do the same, Death Stranding is positively lathered in charm. Its characters are memorable, its story centered on dissecting why connections, community, and caring for your fellow human even matters. And all round, Death Stranding stands tall as a lesson to all other game devs that you can make any concept work if you just put your mind to it. Number 2, I Am Bread. This is literally a game about being a piece of bread. Like, how does that even become a thing? Well, like the various other games about physics like Octodad or something like Gang Beasts, Bendy, Physics Happy Combat, I Am Bread maps the 4 corners of a piece of floppy-ass bread to 4 separate buttons. To get anywhere, you'll need to walk your slice around a variety of stock household environments on a quest to get yourself toasted without getting too dirty. Flumping from shelf to worktop, chair to kitchen surface, eventually you'll get to that sweet embrace of an oven stove or actual toaster. It's just one of the funniest things you'll ever play, okay? I Am Bread totally slays. Number 1, Goat Simulator. Initially made as a joke at a game jam, the name given to various small-scale conventions where coders tried to create titles as fast as possible, Goat Simulator then took off in an almost indescribable way. What was it about controlling this full-on banter goat that was so enticing even before we'd done it ourselves? The same thing happened with Untitled Goose Game, but where that was actually genuinely well made and comes off as a neat Hitman-esque stealth game with fun AI patterns to exploit, Goat Simulator at launch was every bit the pee-taking tech demo it started out as. Still, Coffee Stain Studios made bank with their township-wrecking goat, recouping dev costs in 10 minutes and selling over 1 million copies. The game itself, though, kinda terrible, but you can lick someone to death and get a jetpack, so there's that. And that is just a small selection of the most banterific titles that gaming has to offer. The ones that fell flat on their face for attention, but managed to roll through and take a bow. Let me know your favorites down in the comments below, and please check out the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com, and I'll catch you soon.